My name is Rolf Rosenkrantz and I'm here at the European Development Days in Brussels, and with me is a very familiar face to the international development community, Maarten de Hinden, the Chief of the Swiss Development Corporation. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So what brings you to Brussels this week here?
Well, it's the exciting event, the European Development Days, which gives a lot of opportunities to exchange with people, with colleagues from the European Commission, but also beyond, with civil society people, people from the countries in the south. This is, let's say, the main attraction. And then I had also the opportunity to participate in debates about land grabbing, about democracy promotion, two issues I'm very much interested in personally.
And land grabbing is an issue, of course, that around the world occurs and that the European Commission seems to want to focus more on in the future. What does Switzerland do in that regard, and what is your advice for the donor community and the aid community to tackle this very challenging and cross-cutting issue?
As a first, it's important to tackle it at all. I think it has still not the attention it deserves. The responsibility to some extent is mainly with the partner countries, that they play their role and the international community should support them. But it is also about corporate social responsibility and about the behavior of European, and including of course Swiss companies, to not get involved in this kind of activities.
And what kind of incentives can you give those companies?
It's very different according to the company. I think if you're dealing with a company that are producing consumer goods, there is a pressure from the consumer. A company does not, let's say, want to have a bad image because they're involved in land grabbing and other similar kinds of activities. There is the pressure, and those companies, this was somebody from an NGO who told it, Coca-Cola and Nestle were at the top with regard to behavior. And then of course there are other companies without a direct contact to the consumers, and their legislation and the enforcement of legislation will be important.
And the other issue you mentioned is governance and democracy, human rights. What can a donor like Switzerland, which doesn't have that much money compared to many other countries, many other organizations, what can you do in order to force that issue?
I think governance is exactly an issue where you don't make the difference with huge amounts of money. You make the difference with huge amounts of money when it is about infrastructure. Governance, empowering people has, in our view, is a main driver for development. Putting people in the center, empower them, using rights-based approaches can assure quality of public services, and this is something that is very dear to us, also given our own history and our political system. And there we had an interesting discussion, organized by the way by the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, how to measure it, how to measure the impact. And what we contributed to the discussion is also to present our economic political analysis, the way how we assess performances mainly of local governments, how we have developed a methodology to look in what way the citizens are, in what way the citizens are benefiting from those programs. But it's a difficult issue, and it's also difficult because to some extent you interfere in a setting you find in a country, and therefore you need to be extremely cautious, and you need to be aware that it's always the partner country that needs to be in the center, that needs to be in the driving seat.
What do you say to countries that are maybe to some degree stepping back on the governance front or the human rights front? In Kenya, for instance, there have been new laws now after the Westgate tragedy to curtail media freedom. and foreign ownership. What can Switzerland, what can a country that is an international partner do in order to, again, affect that?
I'm personally convinced that the respect of human rights, that having political rights, that having freedom of the press is decisive for a country to move ahead. It's also, even in a country like Switzerland, sometimes boring, the media freedom where people can write anything they want about you. But eventually it's an efficient form of control, and eventually it improves the quality of what the government is doing, including what Swiss Development Corporation is doing. So I would advise them to consider it and not to have a negative, antipathetic approach with regard to those freedoms.
It seems that some actors in development right now are arguing for more conditional aid in cases like the violation of human rights. Where do you stand on that?
This is something that there is really a debate around it in the Swiss Parliament and in the Swiss public. Conditionality, introduce conditionality where we say, well, this is a country that violates human rights, therefore we should withdraw, is in my view not the right thing to do. We should carefully analyze what is the effect of what we are doing on human rights, on development and all those issues, and what would be the effect of a withdrawal. And in many cases, particularly as we are carrying out development aid, a withdrawal would mean that those who are perhaps already victimized by a political situation would suffer more than those you want to give a strong message.
And if I could ask you lastly, what sort of messages from Switzerland are you going to bring into your new role, your next role, to Washington DC, obviously a big donor nation? Is there anything that the US can learn from the Swiss approach to development?
Well, I have not the ambitions to teach lessons either to the European Union or to the United States. But we have a long cooperation with USAID in particular, and this is one of the beauties of development cooperation and humanitarian aid, that you're not so much in a competition mood, but that you have more or less common objectives, and this prepares the ground for good cooperation. And this is also something that happens, that very close cooperation, exchanging information, running common projects, and this is also one of the reasons why meetings like the ones we have now are so precious and important also for the operational work.
Well, we'll be watching your work in a couple of months and then long thereafter very closely. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.